Ladies and gentlemen, Olapa, welcome to each and every one of you to Harry's Deepenings, where we have been studying various books, texts for about 6 years now. And we have a wonderful group of people who all have great knowledge, and we go through the books, we recap what we have read and try and get inspired and have enthusiasm to carry out a lot of the work that is needed. And we had a poll trying to decide whether we rerun the Dawnbreakers or we start a new book, and the masses have spoken that it was this book, Memories of 9 Years in Akká, by Dr. Younes Afroukhdeh, that we are going to look at. Now, these are the memoirs of the memories of Dr. Younes Afroukhdeh, but it was, of course, Riaz Masrour who went through the painstaking trouble of translating these for us. So today we may not get into the body of the main text itself per se. However, we will start the book in chronological order, of course. And here we can see a picture of Dr. Younes Khan Afroukhdeh. And the pictures in our text here, sadly, are a little smaller than we perhaps would like, but where able, I've tried to get bigger pictures for us to see. So we will start with our reading. If anybody has any comments or questions, of course, feel free to raise your hand. Typically, we take these comments or questions after we've gone through the reading and the explanation. So this is a George Ronald publication. I'm sure many of you are familiar with George Ronald, and they have been very kind again in giving me this online version for us to study. But we will start with a note from the translator. A note from the translator. Janab Khan, the title by which Dr. Younes Afroukhdeh was honored by Abdul Baha, was a writer, an interpreter, a wonderful poet, a magnificent orator, a brilliant physician, and an indefatigable teacher of the faith of God. He was also a first-class humorist, and it is this heavenly quality of wit and humor that infuses this volume with a mood rarely seen in similar literature, and thus makes reading these pages such an interesting and delightful experience. My father had been a patient of this beloved servant of Abdul Baha, and used to tell me in my youth about him and the wonderful stories of his famous memoirs. Once, gazing at a portrait of the beloved Janab Khan, which my father kept in his study, I remarked that he looked so radiant that it was almost as if the picture emitted light. The observation seemed to transport my father to another place and time. His eyes glazed over and remained fixed on a far point in space, as a wistful smile found play on his lips. After what seemed like a long pause, he said, "That is the light of Abdul Baha." Janab Khan was at the threshold for 9 years. That is why the light is so intense. All this made my first reading of these memoirs much more meaningful. It was Light writing about the sun, a physician describing the true healer. It was the utterly devoted lover writing about love personified. Over those 9 years, 1900 through to 1909, Janab Khan served Abdul Baha as secretary, translator, envoy, and physician. His account of some of the most significant events of the period, his graphic and stirring depictions of the various attributes and moods of Abdu'l-Baha, and the description of his own emotions, all expressed in a lively and at times mischievous language of humour and wit, and made ever more meaningful by the addition of the verses of poetry, including some of his own, interspersed throughout the book, make this volume uniquely memorable. On his return to Persia, as he began his brilliant career in medicine, Janab Khan continued to serve the cause of God with ever-increasing passion. He describes in his memoirs in some detail the teaching firesides he held at his home in Tehran in times when such activities could have spelled doom. In 1925, he traveled to the United States, where he spoke at large gatherings and imparted to the friends in that region the light of the faith and certitude he had absorbed from the Master. A few years later, he embarked on an extensive European tour where he not only introduced the life-giving principles of the faith of Baha'u'llah to many a gathering, but also was a living demonstration to the friends of the spirit of love and fellowship which flows from the practice of those principles. In a moving passage from his wonderful memoirs, he recounts that once, as he made his report to Abdu'l-Baha of his visit to Paris, where he had been sent by the Master, he made mention of the fact that his appearance among the French believers and his words to them seemed to have a deeply profound effect on them. Suddenly, Abdu'l-Baha halted, and turning his blessed face to me asked, "How many years have you been with us?" "4 years," I replied. "In these 4 years, you don't know what I have given you. You have no idea what you have absorbed from me." In addition to his international teaching services, Janab Khan was also active in Baha'i administration. He served on the National Spiritual Assembly of Persia, as well as the Spiritual Assembly of Tehran for many years, until advanced age and the onset of a chronic illness deprived him of the energy to continue. His health deteriorated over time until, on the 28th of November 1948, he left this earthly abode for his heavenly home, so that once again he might gain admittance to the heavenly threshold of his beloved Master. His In Memoriam may be found in the Baha'i World, Volume 12, pages 679 through to 681. At each reading of Janab Khan's memoirs, one tends to come away with a new impression, a fresh realization, a deeper understanding of the words of that heavenly reality, Abdu'l-Baha. In the course of my last reading of the book, and as I replaced Persian words and concepts with their English equivalents, I caught something significant that had escaped me in previous readings. Absorbed and captivated by the warmth that radiated from these pages, I began to visualize myself as a player in the story, an observer of the events, a resident of the Pilgrim House. So I too began to experience, in a daydream state, the joy and thrill of nearness to the beloved master. And as I pounded the computer keys, I too basked in the sunshine of his love. Along with the rest of the friends, we seemed to be in the midst of paradise while living in the most great prison. No one wished for anything but to be near him and to live out his life in a sort of spiritual ecstasy, as if there was nothing else to life. Then one day, quite suddenly, just after the dismantling of the most great prison, the master voiced his long-cherished desire. I have to spread the teachings of God around the world. Before his reincarceration in the city of Akká, he had repeatedly mentioned the fact that, were it not for the safeguarding of the most holy shrine, I would travel and teach the faith. And now that he felt the shrines were safe, he was making plans to do exactly that. For me, reading those words came a sudden awakening, as if he seemed to be telling me that we have a duty in this world to perform. We are not here to simply enjoy each other's company and the comforts of life. It is not enough to remain good Baha'is and simply lead a passive life. We must follow him and win the hearts of men by our conduct, actions, and words. Janaba Khan's distinguished himself in following the master's exhortations for the remaining days of his life. He himself became an unforgettable example of devotion, service, and sacrifice for all the lovers of Abdul-Baha the world over. I began the translation of the 124 BE 1968 revised edition of the book in the summer of 1996 and gave to it my utmost effort, although there always remains room for improvement. I have translated much of the poetry and have tried to keep intact the weight of the original verse and the beauty of the rhyme, which are such indispensable features of classical Persian poetry. My English translations of Abdul-Baha's unpublished tablets and prayers, whether from Arabic or Persian, remain provisional and are so annotated. There is so much here that despite my best endeavors, this translation can never hope to match the beauty and zest of the original. My hope is that English-speaking believers, not unlike myself, may take this spiritual journey with Janaba Khan, and in doing so, enrich their lives, strengthen their resolve in service to the cause, and, God willing, share with him, in whatever may be their portion, the extraordinary joy of experiencing nearness to the magical presence of the center of the covenant, Abdul-Baha. I wish to thank my dear friend, Mr. Adel Shafipur, for his help in translating some of the Arabic tablets and deciphering certain Arabic passages which escaped my level of competency, but not his. I am indebted to Dr. Hushang Sharifi for his assistance with translation of further Arabic text, Mrs. May Hoffman's editing of the manuscript was truly a service of love. With the precision and skill of a surgeon, she performed the invaluable service of sorting out words, sentences, and paragraphs, and making sure that the outcome was an English document. I wish to express my deep gratitude to my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Arhang Rabbani, through whose suggestion I began the project and whose constant encouragement and invaluable assistance in reviewing and refining of the text enabled me to complete it. This translation is dedicated to my beloved wife, Riaz Masrour, whose all-consuming devotion and constant care and attention spurred me on from beginning to end. I know of no other handmaiden of Abdul-Baha who has happily accepted so many of the household burdens and responsibilities, given more of her time and industry, and generally fussed over her husband more intensely and with more vigor and love in support of his pursuit of a goal. Without it, this translation would have carried the name of another of Abdul-Baha's servants than mine. And in recognition of her support, my heart is filled with humility and gratitude. Riaz Masrour, August 2003. Now, sadly, I've come to find out that dear Riaz Masrour passed away quite recently, in fact. And here is a picture of the individual that has written this passage, that has translated this. And I feel very saddened that I didn't get to meet him. But, of course, we honor him in reading this as well. And we get to continue reading this book. So there are some notes from the publisher as well, which I will race through. I will read slightly quicker just to make sure we cover them, just to do justice to the book. But I'll pick up the speed a little bit for that. A note from the publisher. Many people have assisted in making possible at least the full English translation of Khatirate Nosole Akká. In addition to those already mentioned by the translator, the publisher would like to thank the following: Nivarna Farhomand Afrokhte and Farzana Yazdi Afrokhte, daughters of the author, and Minerva Douglas, his granddaughter, for their interest and support. Said Khadivian, whose unpublished translation of these memoirs in the early 90s provided a useful point of reference to the non-Persian speaking editor of the present translation. Mr. Ali Nakhjavani, for his continued encouragement, and the following for their technical help in providing information and materials: Laura Barnes, Arthur Leon Dahl, Roger Dahl, Iraj Khoradust, Diana Kitanova Sami, Erica Leith, Minu Morafi, Mahmoud Samandari, Shapur Rasek, Robert Stockman, and Mina Yazdani. We wish also to thank the staff at the Baha'i World Center who read and revised the provisional translations of writings by Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha. The writings of Khatirate Nosole Akká was finished in the year 99 BE, 1942. But its first publication did not take place until 10 years later in 109 BE, 1952. A revised edition appeared in 124 BE, 1967, and that edition, reprinted in 1983 by Kalimat Press, is the version used in this translation. The most recent Persian edition was published in Germany in 2003. To assist the reader, the publisher has added explanatory endnotes and a section of biographical notes on many of the people mentioned in the book. These do not form part of the original text. Preface to the first edition, 1952. In the name of God, the All-Glorious. Memories of 9 years in Akká, written by Dr. Younes Afrokhouter, is a remarkable book. Afrokhouter is a remarkable book. Using delightful expressions and in the sweetest choice of words, the author records those momentous and horrifying events related to the uprising of the breakers of the covenant and the sorrow and anguish of the center of the covenant. Among those works dealing with the history of covenant breaking, this book is preeminent in its clear establishment of truth from falsehood. It has been honored by the approval and praise of the beloved guardian and his explicit instruction to this assembly that it should be published and disseminated. Its author was favored after his passing by the following cable from the beloved guardian. Its author was favored after his passing by the following cable from the beloved guardian. Words of infinite bounty from the heaven of mercy and generosity. Hearts grief-stricken, passing beloved Younes Afrokhouter, distinguished promoter holy faith, herald covenant, trusted secretary, beloved master, staunch supporter, his testament. His service enrich annals both heroic, formative ages, faith. Instruct assemblies, all provinces, hold befitting memorial gatherings. Inform Varga, erect my behalf monument, his grave. Ardently praying Almighty's inestimable blessing, his soul. Signature of the Guardian. These words of the Guardian serve as a true indicator of the character of the esteemed author and eliminate the need for any further description of his praiseworthy qualities and virtues, or of the record of his services. The publication of this book will no doubt bear many fruits. It will bring increased awareness to the friends of God of the significance of the divine covenant, the necessity of eschewing covenant breakers, and the deceit and treachery of this loathsome group. Further, it will familiarize young Baha'is who have not personally witnessed the upheaval of covenant breaking and have not encountered the seditious and corrupting deeds of these destroyers of the foundation of the faith of God with their malicious actions. This assembly recommends to all the friends the in-depth perusal of this wonderful book. Ali Akbar Furutan, Secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly of Iran. Forward. some 37 years have passed since the occasion of my first pilgrimage to the threshold of the incomparable beloved Abdul-Baha. It is my purpose, therefore, to record for posterity the recollections of my 3-month residence in the most great prison city of Akká, and then to continue these reminiscences and share with the reader my memories of the 9 years of my second pilgrimage, which took place 34 years ago. It seems now as though I had a dream lasting 3 months, some 38 years ago, and another 9 years in duration, which began 34 years past and ended 25 years ago. I shall, therefore, set out to record under the title of Memories of 9 Years in Akká an account of my spiritual discoveries during those dream-like journeys. In so doing, I shall attempt to refrain from relating unsubstantiated tales and hearsay traditions, and shall leave the interpretation of these dreams to posterity. My hope is that future generations of believers may become acquainted with past events and, unlike the followers of other religions, who have largely remained incognizant of the traits and attributes of past manifestations, obtain an understanding of the character, personality, and manners of one such divinely inspired personage. This account covers certain historically significant events. For the largest portion of these memoirs relates to the activities of the covenant breakers in the time of Abdul-Baha. Since Baghdad was the initial site of their rebellion, I shall begin the story with my journey to that city. I should state at the outset that to remember events that took place a quarter of a century ago is no easy task, especially in my case, for I have always suffered from a pronounced frailty in this faculty. However, highlights of these events have left such an indelible impression on my mind that even if after thousands of years, the minute particles of my minute particles of my remains, having since been cast into limitless space by the hand of nature, were to be recovered and analyzed, the memories of those past events might yet be detected by any attentive observer. It is this hidden power, residing in the recesses of my memory, which encourages and propels me to recount the events of the past for the generations of the future. Having said this, in relating this story, I still find myself unable to depend solely on those brain cells that house the record of my lifelong memories. Moreover, I do not intend to depend on any assistance from those unidentified microscopic beings. Instead, I shall place my hope and trust in the divine assistance of Abdul-Baha. My prayer is that his spirit may shine forth from the concourse on high with the luminous light of his bounty and generosity, and aid the hosts of feeble and unlettered ones, such as this servant. And so it is, in that heavenly and holy being, that I place my wholehearted reliance as I take out the pen and begin the story. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin chapter 1 in our next session. If after hearing those words you are not excited, you are not eagerly awaiting this to begin, well, I don't know what to say. It is beautifully, beautifully written. We are very privileged to have this account. And again, we certainly thank dear Riaz Masrour for his incredible work in giving this gift to us. And as I mentioned, sadly, he passed away recently, but he, of course, will be with the master. So very much looking forward to this read. Some incredible stories that will serve to inspire and infuse us. Are there any comments or questions that anybody has before we end, as we always do, with some prayers? And a reminder that we always start at the same time using the same link, just in case you've joined us here for the first time. We'll be running this on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So if anybody has any comments, if there's anything they want to share, if you want to share your excitement, feel free. But I'm very much looking forward to some of these stories. Dear Terry, please.
Thanks for your eloquent voice. Always looking forward to your readings.
Thank you very much, dear Terry. I mean, what a piece of work. What a piece of work. So I'm very much looking forward to this. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize for my voice being the predominant voice. But as we go through these sessions, as I say, we will read, we will reflect, and of course, we will be inspired. So could I suggest perhaps that seeing as dear Riaz Khan passed away fairly recently, and seeing as we've been given this gift by him in translating it for us, perhaps we say some prayers for his blessed soul.